Al Capone, often referred to as the Real Scarface, was a notorious American gangster who rose to prominence during the Prohibition era of the 1920s and 1930s. This period, characterized by the nationwide ban on alcohol, inadvertently fueled organized crime, offering fertile ground for mobsters like Capone to thrive. Born in Brooklyn to immigrant parents, Capone ascended the criminal ranks to become the boss of the Chicago Outfit, a formidable criminal organization that dominated the illegal alcohol trade. Capone's era is significant as it highlights the symbiotic relationship between prohibition laws and organized crime. This period reveals how legislative measures intended to curb vice can sometimes yield unintended consequences, such as widespread corruption and a burgeoning black market economy. Capone's influence extended beyond the realm of crime. He became a cultural icon, symbolizing the lawlessness and excesses of the Roaring Twenties. An illustrative example of Capone's reach was the infamous St. Valentine's Day Massacre in 1929, a brutal gangland killing that exemplified the violent tactics employed by mobsters to maintain control. Another real-world example of Capone's impact was his establishment of a vast network of speakeasies, which not only flouted prohibition laws, but also laid the groundwork for the modern nightclub scene. Many view Capone as a product of his environment, a figure who capitalized on the failures of prohibition. Some historians argue that his criminal endeavors, though nefarious, exposed the inefficacy of certain government policies. This perspective suggests that Capone's activities inadvertently forced a reevaluation of prohibition, ultimately leading to its repeal in 1933. Conversely, Capone is also seen as the embodiment of the violent, ruthless side of the American dream, a narrative that glorifies wealth and power even when obtained through illicit means. Challenges and controversies surrounding Capone's legacy often center on the romanticization of his life. While some admire his cunning and business acumen, others criticize the glamorization of his violent lifestyle. This dichotomy raises questions about the ethical implications of idolizing criminals and the potential for such figures to be seen as anti-heroes in popular culture. Capone's story is intrinsically linked to broader aspects of mob history, influencing later generations of organized crime figures. His operations set precedents for future mob activities, from money laundering to political bribery. Understanding Capone's era provides insight into the dynamics of crime and law enforcement, illustrating the complex interplay between legality, morality, and survival in a rapidly changing world. Al Capone, often known as Scarface, rose to prominence in the Chicago Underworld during the Prohibition era, a period marked by the nationwide constitutional ban on the production, importation, transportation, and sale of alcoholic beverages. His ascent in organized crime is a striking example of how prohibition inadvertently fueled the growth of organized crime in the United States. Capone's rise was defined by his ability to combine ruthless violence with savvy business tactics, enabling him to create an illicit empire that controlled much of Chicago's illegal alcohol trade. The significance of Capone's rise lies in his transformation from a small-time hood into the face of organized crime in America. Not only did he embody the lawlessness of the Roaring Twenties, but his reign also highlighted the limitations of law enforcement in tackling organized crime, forcing a reevaluation of prohibition policies and policing methods. Capone's influence extended beyond criminal activities, as he garnered a degree of public fascination and even admiration due to his flamboyant lifestyle and alleged acts of charity, further complicating his public image. Two specific examples underscore Capone's prominence. First, his orchestration of the St. Valentine's Day Massacre in 1929, one of the most infamous gangland killings in history, underscored his ruthless approach to eliminating competition. This event solidified his control over the Chicago underworld by drastically weakening rival gangs. Second, his establishment of a sophisticated network for bootlegging liquor demonstrated his shrewd business acumen. Capone's ability to maintain control over this vast operation, including bribing police and officials, showcased his dominance and intelligence. Opinions about Capone are varied, with some viewing him as a criminal mastermind who capitalized on public demand for illegal goods, while others see him as a brutal gangster who left a legacy of violence and corruption. His story is controversial as it raises questions about the efficacy of prohibition and the role of government in regulating morality and vice. Challenges associated with Capone's rise include the systemic corruption that allowed his operations to flourish, as well as the public's glamorization of his lifestyle, which overshadowed the violence and crime he propagated. Alternative viewpoints suggest that his prominence was exaggerated by media sensationalism, which contributed to his mythologization. Capone's rise in the Chicago underworld is a central aspect of his legacy, illustrating the intricate interplay between crime, law enforcement, and societal norms during the Prohibition era. His influence is a crucial component in understanding the broader narrative of organized crime in America, setting the stage for future criminal enterprises and law enforcement evolution. Al Capone's mob, often referred to as the Chicago Outfit, was a sophisticated criminal organization that operated primarily during the Prohibition era in the United States. This structure was not just a random collection of criminals, but a well-organized entity that functioned similarly to a legitimate business. At its core, Capone's mob was an intricate network of operations, including illegal activities like bootlegging, gambling, prostitution, and various forms of racketeering. The organization's hierarchy was carefully defined, with Capone at the top as the undisputed leader, supported by a loyal and efficient group of lieutenants and enforcers. This structure allowed Capone to maintain control, eliminate competition, and maximize profits. The significance of understanding Capone's mob structure lies in its impact on organized crime in America. It represented a new era of crime syndication where the line between crime and business became blurred. The mob's ability to corrupt public officials and law enforcement showcased the extent of its power and influence, which went beyond mere street-level crime. This set a precedent for future organized crime groups, illustrating how illicit activities could be masked under the guise of legitimate enterprises. A notable example of Capone's operations was the St. Valentine's Day Massacre in 1929, a brutal event that eliminated significant competition and cemented Capone's dominance over Chicago's underworld. Another example is the expansive bootlegging network that Capone managed, which supplied illegal alcohol during Prohibition and made millions in profits, demonstrating the efficiency and reach of his operations. Supporters of Capone's methods might argue that he was a businessman who provided goods and services in demand during Prohibition, pointing to his philanthropic efforts as proof of a softer side. However, critics highlight the violence and corruption his operations fostered, along with the detrimental effects on society and law enforcement integrity. Controversies surrounding Capone's operations include debates on whether his actions were primarily driven by greed or necessity, given the socio-political climate of the era. Alternate viewpoints suggest that his downfall was inevitable due to the unsustainable nature of his business model and the relentless pursuit by federal agents like Eliot Ness. Overall, the structure and operations of Capone's mob influenced not only the criminal underworld, but also the public perception of organized crime, demonstrating the challenges law enforcement faced, while also inspiring future anti-crime legislation and efforts. Understanding this aspect is crucial to grasp the full narrative of Al Capone and his impact on American history. Notorious activities and criminal enterprises refers to the illegal and often violent operations orchestrated by Al Capone and his associates during the height of Prohibition in the United States. These activities were central to Capone's empire, enabling him to amass a fortune and exert significant influence in Chicago and beyond. This point is significant as it highlights the mechanisms through which Capone maintained power and notoriety, embodying the lawlessness and corruption of the era. One quintessential example of Capone's criminal enterprises is his bootlegging operation during Prohibition, a time when the manufacture, sale, and transportation of alcoholic beverages were banned. Capone capitalized on the public's insatiable demand for alcohol, running an extensive network that smuggled and distributed illicit liquor. This not only filled his coffers, but also cemented his reputation as a kingpin who could defy federal law with impunity. Another example is the St. Valentine's Day Massacre in 1929, which demonstrated the lethal enforcement measures Capone employed to eliminate rivals and control the Chicago underworld. This brutal act of violence, where 7 members of a rival gang were gunned down, showcased Capone's willingness to use extreme measures to consolidate power, further amplifying his infamy. Supporters of the view that Capone was merely fulfilling a societal demand argue that his operations were a response to the failures of Prohibition, reflecting the public's disregard for the law. However, the challenges and controversies surrounding Capone's legacy are manifold. Critics emphasize the violence and corruption that permeated his operations, as well as the broader implications of glorifying such criminal figures despite their destructive impact on society. Law enforcement struggled to contain Capone's reach, which often extended to bribery and coercion of public officials, raising ethical concerns about the intersection of crime and governance. The concept of notorious activities and criminal enterprises fundamentally connects to other aspects of Al Capone's life and the larger mob ecosystem. His criminal endeavors were the backbone of his wealth and power, enabling other facets of his influence, such as political manipulation and media infamy. Furthermore, these activities spotlight the systemic issues of the time, such as the inadequacy of law enforcement and the public's ambivalence toward organized crime. Understanding these enterprises offers a lens into the socio-political climate of Prohibition America and the enduring legacy of one of its most infamous characters.